Hi, good morning. I am Sir Michael. I will be your proctor for your subject, Social Studies. Before we start, let's have first a prayer. Who will lead the prayer? Okay, Mr. Sugino, you may now lead the prayer. Miss Secretary, do we have any absent for today? None? Thank you very much. You may now take your seat. Mr. Nagisa, before we start our discussion for today's lesson, can you tell me what have you learned on our discussion last meeting? Very good. Now you may take your seat. How about the others? Miss Hinano, what have you learned in our discussion last week? Very good. Now I know that you really listen on our discussion. Class, what before we start, I would like you to watch this short video.
The rise of Rome is truly extraordinary. We look back on it from the perspective that it was ordained, that it was destined to happen. But in reality, it was a very small Greek city-state that rose to such great heights and achieved such enormous success, the world has never been the same.
In the middle of the 3rd century BC, Rome itself was very much on the up. It wasn't a massive world power. Rome's expansionism was driven by defensive considerations. They were protecting their own interests or protecting their allies, even if reality meant that they were attacking other people.
The military was central to Roman society. It undergirded everything that they did.
Rome conquered what we called at the time the known world, and Rome power grew based on fear.
When Rome conquered its enemy, it didn't just leave them to their own devices. It moved in, it set up systems. There were points of inclusion, there are points of suppression, and ultimately there's a system that really worked for Rome to remain in power.
Rome wants a number of things from the territories it conquers. It wants wealth, it wants glory, and it wants human capital. It wants slaves. By the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, Rome becomes the greatest slave society in the history of the ancient world. This is slavery on a massive scale, even we might say on an industrial scale. And it's affecting the lives of millions of people in the Mediterranean who are caught in the Romans' nets.
They ruled the Mediterranean with their galleys at that point. And so if you came into conflict with Rome, you could count on destruction.
In the 2nd century AD, Rome had reached its zenith, its greatest territorial extent. It was kind of like when a roller coaster gets to the very top of a rise and is about to go down the other side. You get this glorious moment of feeling like you're on top of everything, and you're almost unaware that terror is about to start. This happened, I think, to the Romans in the 2nd century. They were sitting on top of the world and weren't aware that in the 3rd century, everything was going to come apart.
You could say the Roman Empire's eyes are bigger than its stomach. It pushed really far out, and then it ended up with an empire which was too big to manage.
The first signs of the empire being torn apart from its very fabric is the crisis of the 3rd century. You've got revolts, you've got civil war, hyperinflation, and a string of useless emperors.
As the Roman Empire began to crumble and the territories that it had once controlled began to fall away from Roman power and fall into the hands of barbarians, they had to come to grips with the fact that they were no longer the only big player in this game, that they were slowly surrendering power to other people that they had to now treat as equals.
Rome was in some senses a victim of its own success. It had become such an incredible source of power and of wealth. It became a prize in an unending series of civil wars and political intrigues, which in the end brought about its collapse.
the cost of building the kind of imperial power Rome has in the Mediterranean world were enormous. The costs on Roman society were incalculable, and the bill had to be paid.
We're amazed that Rome lasted as long as it did, but the fact that it collapsed is not so much a sign that the Romans themselves were weak or had a bad idea in undertaking this project at all. It's more of a sign that empires are bound to go up and down, to rise and to fall.
Class, what the video is all about? Correct. Our topic is about the Roman Empire and its downfall. We will also discuss the 5 great emperors and the worst emperors. Now let's start our discussion by going back to 60 to 53 BC, the first triumvirate in ancient Rome. The first triumvirate was a competition that will decide who will be the leader of Rome. It is between Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. These three have their own campaign to prove that they are capable of leading a country. Pompey do his campaign in the Middle East, but he was failed to conquer the Persians. While Crassus go to Persia, but then he was killed during the battle. And Caesar go to France, the old France, which is called Gaul. Because of Caesar's successful military campaign, he became popular to the Romans. And because of that, Pompey became envious of Caesar and afraid of his popularity. That's why Pompey challenged Caesar to return to Rome and disband his army. In order for Caesar to return to Rome, he needs to cross the Rubicon River, the river between Italy and ancient France or the Gaul. During this time, Caesar have an important decision making to choose if he will cross the river. He will lose his prestige and his life. If he will not, he will be labeled as coward. This important decision making of Julius Caesar gave birth to the idiomatic expression crossing the Rubicon River. That means making an important decision. Going back, Caesar is able to come back to Rome and defeated Pompey. But Pompey is able to escape to Egypt, and Caesar follow him there. Class, can you still follow our discussion? Okay, let's continue. Okay, continue when Julius Caesar followed Pompey to Egypt to assassinate him. But Pompey was treacherously struck down and killed by an officer of Ptolemy, and then Caesar met Cleopatra during his stay in Egypt and have an affair with her. Because of the relationship, Rome and Egypt become partners, and it makes both Egypt and Rome stronger. By the way, class, Cleopatra is the last active pharaoh of Egypt. She's an icon of arts and literature. She is also polylingual. She can speak and understand many languages. And she is famous with her trade with the Arab in terms of business. And she is also famous of her giant naval forces. Since Cleopatra is one of the richest women during her time, she gave finances and resources to Caesar. That's why he became more powerful. Question, did Cleopatra and Julius Caesar had a child? Yes, his name is Ptolemy the 15th, and also called Little Caesar. I hope everyone can still follow. Let's move when Caesar come back to Rome. When he come back, he have his speech in the Senate, and there he mentioned the famous quotation, "Veni, vidi, vici," or I came, I saw, I conquered. What are the things that we need to remember about Caesar? He improved the politics in Rome. He's the one who introduced what we call gubernatorial system that placed governor to each provinces to lead it. He also the one who introduced the leap year in the calendar, and he grant Roman citizenship to the places he conquered, like the ancient Spain, the ancient France, etc. Next, the death of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was assassinated on March 15, 44 BC by about 40 Roman senators on the Ides of March, led by his friends Brutus and Cassius. The reason why they assassinated Caesar is that they fear Caesar is planned to claim the title of king, overthrow the Senate, and rule as a tyrant or dictator. The death of Julius Caesar is also considered the death of Roman Republic. Okay class, are we now clear with the first triumvirate? Okay, let's now move to the second triumvirate in ancient Rome. For the second triumvirate, we have Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian. Who are these three? Mark Antony is Caesar's lieutenant, Lepidus is the general of Caesar, and Octavian is the great-nephew of Caesar. The second triumvirate is between these three, and we will decide who will be the next leader of Rome. These three do their campaigns in Philippi, Macedonia, after they defeated the Republican forces, because their goal is to capture those who killed Caesar because Brutus and Cassius already suicide. The main purpose of the creation of Second Triumvirate is to avenge Caesar, and after the campaign, Lepidus expelled from the competition. Now, the battle is between Octavian and Mark Antony. Octavian returned to Rome while Mark Antony stayed in Syria. There, he met Cleopatra and they established an affair. But Mark Antony have a wife and her name was Octavia. She is the sister of Octavian, his rival in the second triumvirate. Because of the affair between Cleopatra and Mark Antony, war broke out between Rome and Egypt, and it's called as the Battle of Actium. A battle between forces of Octavian versus the combined forces of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, and Octavian being the victor. Okay, any question about the second triumvirate? Okay. After that battle, what happens to Cleopatra and Mark Antony is they both suicide. It's like till death do us part. Any other question? None? Okay, let's move to the Roman Empire. After the Battle of Actium, the win of Octavian and the defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra is the start of the Roman Empire. And Octavian became Augustus Caesar, the first emperor of the Roman Empire. By the way, his full name is Augustus Imperator Princeps Caesar. Augustus is famous on his quotation, "I found Rome a city of brick, I left it a city of marble." Augustus Caesar ruled Rome for over 45 years. During his reign, the Rome experienced its what we call Golden Age. What are the contributions of Augustus Caesar to the Roman Empire? First is there was an honest and efficient officials in each provinces, and the corrupt officials has been ousted. He also built swamps, roads, canals, temples, palace, public baths, and theater. He strengthened the agriculture and commerce. He also traded different products and raw materials to different countries like North Africa, Cyprus, Egypt. After the death of Augustus Caesar in August 14 CE, at the age of 75, he was immediately succeeded by his adopted son, Tiberius. In this part, we'll now discuss the Roman emperors, and are we clear with Augustus Caesar? Okay, Roman emperors, first we have the Julian dynasty. I'll just give major highlights to these emperors. Okay, Tiberius is the second emperor of Rome, and during his time is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Pontius Pilate is one of the governor of Tiberius. Next we have Caligula. Caligula is a lunatic and psychopath emperor of Rome, and in fact he make his favorite horse senator. Claudius and Nero, they are the emperor who persecute the Christian. They let them eaten by the lion, burned alive. And Nero is known for ordering to burn Rome and blame it to the Christian. During the Julian dynasty, that is the reign of the worst emperors. Next, Flavian dynasty. we have Vespasian, Titus, Domitian. What are the things we need to remember to them? Vespasian is the one who introduced policies on finance and gladiator coliseum, while Titus is the son of Vespasian and he is known for conquering Jerusalem. During the reign of Titus, the Mount Vesuvius erupted that destroyed the city of Pompeii. What is the city of Pompeii? The city of Pompeii is a city of sins. And for the last emperor in Flavian dynasty, we have Domitian. Domitian is a psychopath like Nero. He is cruel and unjust. Any question with Flavian dynasty? Okay, finally, we have now the 5 great emperors. Let's start with the first good emperor, Nerva. During the time of Nerva, it is called the era of good feelings. Why? Because there is a good treatment from Roman officials or the ruling elites to the citizens. Nerva also helped the poor. He created charities, and in terms of governance, Nerva created adoption system that prevents civil war in Rome. After Nerva, we have Trajan. During his time, Rome reaches its farthest border, the Danube and Rhine River. After Trajan, we have Hadrian. Hadrian is the one who built wall to the border of Rome that Trajan reached. It's called the Hadrian Wall. And during his time, Rome reaches Britannia, now known as England, which is the last place Rome conquered. Hadrian is a kind emperor that he treated the people he conquered as Romans and grant them Roman citizenship. And the soldier in those places, he trained them like a Roman soldiers. But those non-Italian soldiers Hadrian trained betrayed him and allied with the barbarians that caused the downfall of Rome. Next good emperor, we have Antoninus Pius. He created policy, prohibited the mistreatment to slaves, and these policies allowed slaves to socialize with other people. It's like you give the slave good treatment. The concept of due process, innocent until proven guilty, has been introduced during the time of Antoninus Pius. He has also made indigenous people soldiers, and Antoninus Pius built a wall. It is called the Antonine Wall, similar to the Hadrian Wall. Last but not the least, we have Marcus Aurelius. He is called as Stoic Emperor. He is the second to last emperor of the Pax Romana. He wrote a book titled Meditation. His famous saying is that always stay calm on everything. We cannot always use violence and hatred to solve things. And according to Marcus Aurelius, we must live in purpose and find meaning in our life. Any question about the emperors of Rome? Okay, let's for the last part of our discussion, the fall of Roman Empire. There are 2 main reasons why Roman Empire declined. First is the failed leadership of the Barrax Emperor. Second is the invasion of the barbarians, such as the Germanic tribes and the Hunnic Empire. The Barrax emperors are Roman emperors that comes from the Roman soldiers. The means of selections of the Barrax emperors is that the strongest warrior will be the next emperor. The leadership of the Barrax emperors is a total disaster because they only focus on militaristic aspect of the empire. One of the known Barrax emperors is Diocletian. He is the one who divided Rome into 2, the West Rome and the East Rome. The West Rome is the one that attacked by the barbarians, while the East Rome became the Byzantine Empire under the leadership of Constantine the Great. There are 2 reasons why they split Rome. First because it will be easy to rule, and second is on the conflict on iconoclasm, because the Western, they are favored on using statue for worship for the illiterate to understand Holy Scripture, but the Eastern disagree with this because they believe it is idolatry. and that's the reason why they are easily invaded by the Germanic tribes. We have the Vikings, who formed the modern Russia, the Franks, who formed the modern France, the Anglo-Saxons, who formed the modern England, and the Visigoths, who formed the modern Spain. What are the things we need to realize from the fall of Roman Empire? We need to realize that you must choose a leader who is capable on military aspect and policy making. A leader who have plans for the betterment of the country. Now we are done with our discussion. Let's have a group activity. I will group you into two and you answer this question. Number 1, emperor known as the Stoic Emperor. Number 2, he made a horse senator. Number 3, one of the 5 good emperors. Number 4, son of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. And number 5, he was the first Roman emperor. Next individual activity, in a clean piece of paper, describe on your own words what kind of emperor is the 5 good emperors. To evaluate your learning today, you will create a timeline about the events happened in ancient Rome and cite your answers. And for your assignment, research and study what happened in the Trojan War for the sake of our next discussion. And that's all for today's discussion.